Namaste nerds, this is Navinad, Budget Pub Stomper, hoping that you are ready to do some budget Baylen. We're going to be talking about Baylen the Haymaker today. So this is a new Naya commander that's come out, and a lot of the people in the CDH universe are at least under the impression that this is the possibly best competitive commander that's in Naya colors for all of CDH that there is now or ever has been. I'm not sure about that. But maybe, right? So I wanted to take a look and see what I could do at the $100 level with Baylen the Haymaker. So first of all, Baylen is a 3-mana creature. It's a 4/3, Naya. And it says tap 2 untapped tokens you control to make a mana of any color. Tap 3 tokens you control to draw a card. Tap 4 untapped tokens you control to put 3+1 counters on it. Those are permanent. And then it gets trample until end of turn. So the counters stay, the trample is till end of turn. So you've got like a plan E, kill people with commander damage, which isn't as crazy as it normally would be, because you do run a lot of Stax pieces in the deck. You've got a lot of hate bearers, so we're going to be slowing the game down, and it's not unreasonable to grow Baylen into like a pretty big threat. Now, that's not really the draw to the deck, though. That's not why we're going to be playing Baylen, and that's not what we're trying to do with Baylen. This is probably the most intricate. It's an intricate deck. It's got a lot of, like most of my decks, it's a layered combo soup. But this one's a little bit more layered and a little bit more intricate. And I'm going to start just straight off by explaining the most complicated combo in the deck. Now, you can kind of do this with Fauna Shaman. But it's across multiple turns. Usually you are just going to use Fauna Shaman to tutor up a 2-card creature combo. But you can kind of do a version of what I'm about to explain with Fauna Shaman. Works better with Birthing Pod, or like, what's the non-budget version of Fauna Shaman? Survival of the Fittest. But we've got Vivien, and Vivien is really almost as good as Birthing Pod. It's a total of 6 mana, and with Birthing Pod, you've got to pay for the Birthing Pod itself, and you've got to activate it, and activate it again. So really, it's like, it's the same mana. We've just got to kind of cough it all up at one time. So it's 6 mana. It's not the end of the world. It's not, Thassa's Oracle Demonic Consultation, but we're on a budget. We do what we can do. And we are playing a lot of effects that are going to hopefully allow us to get to a later game where we can have 6 mana, and we've got a lot of creature ramp and just ramp in general that's going to allow us to get there faster. So hitting 6 mana is not at all unreasonable. And if you can hit 6 mana with Vivien on the Hunt, it turns your Vivien into a 1-card win condition. But it's not going to play itself. You're going to have to learn this line, probably rehearse it, figure it out. It's you'll get the hang of it, then it's easy enough to go through the line. I'm going to see how easy it is to explain. Let's give it a go. Okay, so what we're going to do, let's just keep everything clean and simple and say the only things we have in play, aside from like land, mana, whatever, is Baylen, and we cast our Vivien on the Hunt. Now, Vivien on the Hunt has a number of abilities, but we're not going to worry about any of them other than its +2 ability. The +2 is like a Birthing Pod. So and by the way, if you want to put a few extra bucks into the deck, you might consider Birthing Pod, although we're playing collector Ouphe effects, so, maybe, maybe not. We're going to do Vivien on the Hunt. We're going to use the +2, which is you may sacrifice a creature and search your library for a creature with converted mana cost 1 plus the sacrificed creature. So if we sacrifice our Baylen, which is a 3-drop, we can bring any 4-mana creature into play out of our deck that we want. And the creature that we're going to be searching up, mind you, you don't have to sacrifice Baylen. If you've got a Manglehorn that's already come in and killed something and it's not doing much work, maybe your Academy Manufacturer's out and you'd rather do that. It can be any 3-drop, but just to keep things simple, we've got Vivien, we've got Baylen. We're going to sacrifice Baylen to Vivien, and we're going to find Felidar Guardian. So Felidar Guardian comes into play. When it does, it has the ability that when it ETBs, you can flicker a permanent you control. Flicker target permanent, yeah. Okay, so Felidar Guardian comes into play, and it's going to flicker Vivien. And the reason we want to flicker Vivien is because we want to use her ability again. So we flicker the Vivien with the Felidar Guardian, resetting Vivien. Then we're going to +2 her again, since she's reset, and we're going to sacrifice the Felidar Guardian to find a 5-mana creature. the 5 mana creature that we're going to find is Karmic Guide. Now, when Karmic Guide enters the battlefield, it's going to ETB, and you'll be able to use its ETB, which is to return target creature from the graveyard directly into the battlefield. And the creature you're going to return is, of course, Felidar Guardian. Now, when Felidar Guardian enters the battlefield again, you're going to flicker Vivien again. Now, what are you going to do? Well, you've got a reset Vivien, and you've got the Felidar back in play. You've got a Karmic Guide in play. So you're going to activate Vivien again to sacrifice Felidar Guardian again. And when you do that, you're going to find another 5-drop creature. The next 5-drop creature you're going to find is Kiki-Jiki. Now, Kiki-Jiki enters the battlefield. It has haste. You still have your Karmic Guide in play. And you've got your Felidar Guardian in the graveyard. You're going to tap your Kiki-Jiki to make a copy of Karmic Guide. The copy of Karmic Guide is going to bring Felidar Guardian back into play. When Felidar Guardian comes back into play, it's going to flicker the Kiki-Jiki. When it flickers the Kiki-Jiki enters the battlefield untapped, and it's got haste, so you can tap it to make a copy of Felidar Guardian. That copy of Felidar Guardian enters the battlefield and flickers Kiki-Jiki. So Kiki comes back in untapped, and you will tap it to make another copy of Felidar Guardian. Rinse and repeat until you have an infinite battlefield full of hasty 1/4 Felidar Guardians. So that's, as complicated as I think any combos on the channel have gotten so far, maybe. Or it's right up there. The combo is easy, right? Kiki-Jiki, Felidar Guardian, win game. But the way that we got there is a little bit interesting, we'll say. A little intricate. And you can do kind of a long-term version of the same thing with Fauna Shaman, or like I said, Birthing Pod does the same thing. But Birthing Pod gets shut off by our Stoney Silence and Collector Ouphe. So we're running a lot of Stax effects. Like Dauntless Dismantle. Well, I guess that wouldn't hurt us. That only hurts our opponents. But we're running a lot of Stax effects to slow the game down so we can get to a point where we can do these kind of more mana-intensive, creature-based combos. But we've got a lot of ways to abuse Baylen inside the deck, and we've got a lot of ways to win the game with interlocking combos. I want to talk about another combo or combo and a half or 2 combos that Baylen the Haymaker also turns on for us. So another combo that Baylen gives us access to is going to be... so the combo would work without Baylen that I'm about to explain, but Baylen is the payoff for the combo. The combo happens, and then if you've got Baylen in play, you're able to use Baylen as an outlet for the combo. So let's get into the next convoluted combo. If we have let's just say we've got Basking Broodscale, and we've got Rosie Cotton of South Lane, both in play at the same time. We've got a bunch of creature tutors, the Fauna Shaman. We've got a couple creature tutors that'll get more than one thing. We've got creature tutors that are on creatures that when they ETB, they tutor, and we've got ways to blink those and retutor. So assembling 2-card combos, creature combos, is pretty straightforward in this deck. But so if we've got I think we have to have Basking Broodscale in play first, because it says whenever 1 or more +1 counters are put on it, you create a 0/1 Eldrazi spawn token. Okay, it just matters that you're creating a token. So when Rosie enters the battlefield, she has an ETB. When she ETBs, she creates a food token. And when you create a token, including the food token that you just created, you get to put a +1 counter on target creature other than Rosie. Well, we don't want to put it on Rosie anyway. We want to put it on the Basking Broodscale. So when we have the Broodscale in play and we cast our Rosie, we make a food token, and that triggers Rosie to put a +1 counter on Broodscale. And then Broodscale sees that it gets a +1 counter on it, and it triggers and creates a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature token. When that token comes into play, Rosie sees it and says, oh, you've created another token. So now we're going to put a +1 counter on another creature, a creature other than Rosie. That creature, of course, being Broodscale, which is going to trigger to make a Scion, which is going to trigger Rosie, which is going to trigger to make... It's going to go infinite. You make infinite tokens. So how do we win with a bunch of infinite tokens? With food tokens and 0/1 Eldrazi spawn tokens. Everything's got summoning sickness. So how do we win? Well, we could gain infinite life. That's a thing we could do, or gain 10 billion life. Sometimes that'll be relevant. But the bigger, more important factor is that we're going to be able to use Baylen the Haymaker's abilities to tap 3 untapped tokens. Well, first of all, to tap 2 of your billion tokens to make a mana. And then the other thing you're going to do is tap 3 of those infinite tokens to draw a card. So this is just infinite mana of any color. Draw your deck, or draw as many cards as you want to draw. So if you draw your deck, you've got access to all the combos in your deck. You've got access to all the mana you need to cast all of the creature combos in the deck, and you can just do like Kiki-Jiki Felidar Guardian that we just discussed. Or we've got Dual Caster Mage Twin Flame. Dual Caster Mage Twin Flame. So you would cast Twin Flame after you've drawn all your cards. You can cast Twin Flame targeting Rosie or whatever, doesn't really matter. And you hold priority. You say, in response to me casting Twin Flame, I'm going to flash in my Dual Caster Mage. The Dual Caster Mage ETBs and copies a spell you control. Well, there's still a Twin Flame on the stack, so you can copy that. That Twin Flame is going to get copied, and it's going to be making it's going to target this time the Dual Caster Mage that you just cast. And that's going to get another ETB that copies the Twin Flame, which is going to copy the Dual Caster, which is going to copy the Twin Flame. And here for 5 mana and 2 cards, infinite Dual Caster Mages with haste, swing, win game. There's other Kiki-Jiki combos. We've got Kiki-Jiki along with Village Bellringer. If we just get these 2 creatures in play, we can tap the Kiki-Jiki to make a copy of Village Bellringer. Village Bellringer, when it enters the battlefield, untaps all creatures, including Kiki-Jiki, which allows you to tap the Kiki-Jiki to make another copy of the Village Bellringer, which untaps the Kiki-Jiki, so on and so forth, and you're going to make, again, infinite 1/4s. Maybe this deck should be called Death by 1/4s, because that's going to be happening a lot. Now, there's another layer to the Rosie combo. What's the other card? Scurry Oak. So Scurry Oak is a 1/2, not a 1/4. But a 1/2 that says whenever 1 or more +1 counters are put on Scurry Oak, you can create a 1/1 squirrel token. So that's going to be essentially the same combo. It costs 3 mana instead of 2 mana for the Basking Brood Scale, but it's going to work the same way. You're going to have your Scurry Oak in play. You're going to cast Rosie. Rosie's going to ETB and make a token, which is going to put a counter on this thing, which is going to make a token that Rosie's going to see, which is going to cause her to put a +1 counter on this thing, which is going to make a copy of, or make a squirrel token, which is going to trigger Rosie, which is going to trigger Scurry Oak, which is going to trigger Rosie, which is going to, so on and so forth. And you're going to use Baylen to make infinite mana, draw your deck, win the game with any of these A+B combos. The other thing that we're going to be looking to do is just play a bunch of token producers and hate bears and mana ramp. I guess we do have a couple other, so there's a couple other kind of semi-intricate setups that we can get into. If we have enough mana dorks in play, or I should say or if we have Elven Chorus, which is just a great value piece in the deck. There's so many creatures in this deck. For 4 mana, this will allow any of them to tap for mana of any color, because it just says on the card, creatures you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. It also allows you to look at the top card of your library at any time, and you can cast creature spells from the top of your library. So it's a nice little value engine, a mana engine, and a card advantage engine. But if we have this in play, or if we just have a bunch of mana producing dorks in play, like let's say we've got our Elysian Caryatid and 3 elves, or Priest of Titania and 3 other elves, or we've got Elven Chorus and just a few creatures, 4 creatures. Any combination that's going to allow us to tap for at least 4 mana. If we have that, then Emil the Blessed will go infinite. With any of our, I guess it kind of depends on, let's just look at the simplest setup. We've got, just say, we've got our dude in play that's a 4 power. So Elysian Caryatid is tapping for 2 mana of any color. And then we've got a Avacyn's Pilgrim, a Birds of Paradise in play along with it. So there's 4 mana worth of dudes to tap. We've got Emil the Blessed, and we've got that Village Bellringer. So we can use Emil. We can tap all of our dorks to float 4 mana, and we can put 3 of the mana into Emil's first ability, which is basically flicker a creature. The creature we're going to flicker is Village Bellringer. When Village Bellringer flickers, its ETB is going to trigger untapping all 4 of our creatures, which is going to allow us to tap them for 4 mana, which we can use 3 of the 4 to flicker Bellringer, untapping the 4 mana worth of creatures, so on and so forth until we make infinite mana. And Emil has another ability that I think a lot of people don't read, but it does say whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay a green. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So once we've got infinite mana, we can start flickering all of our creatures over and over, putting +1/+1 counters on them. And we can use green or white mana to do that. So even if we've got just all green dorks, we got 5 green dorks, 4 green dorks, in fact, just the 1 mana dorks, we can tap them for 4 mana, flicker, using Emil, flicker the Bellringer, untaps all of our dudes, tap them for mana, flicker the Bellringer, untap them, tap them for mana, so on and so forth until we make infinite mana. Once we have infinite mana, we can start flickering each one of those creatures. We're going to have infinite mana, pump our team. A lot of the things when we trigger them are going to come into play with extra tokens. So it's another layer of synergy. We're going to be able to use the infinite mana to infinitely flicker our Manglehorn and blow up everybody's stuff, or infinitely flicker our Recruiter of the Guard and find some combo or some... I just keep putting dudes into play and go crazy, right? What else? If we have anything that we can flicker that makes tokens, then we're going to put a bunch of tokens into play, and that's going to do the same trick where we can make infinite mana and draw our deck with Baylen. Okay, so that's a little bit... yeah, those are some of the more complicated combos out of the way, but there's one more kind of complicated version of this. We can use Temur Sabertooth to do kind of the same trick where we bounce Village Bellringer and then cast Village Bellringer. And if we've got dorks enough, we can continuously do that, and we can re-trigger all of our ETBs infinitely and make infinite mana. Sometimes it's or make infinite mana. Sometimes you'll have the setup where you can trigger ETBs over and over, but you won't be able to actually get infinite mana beyond that. No, that's not true. Once you flicker all your dudes over and over, then you can just start flickering something else and making infinite mana. So Temur Sabertooth with Village Bellringer, or Emil with Village Bellringer. Then you have to have enough dorks to make enough mana, or you have to have Elven Chorus in play, and you go infinite that way. And these are also just pieces that are good in the deck regardless. What else? You can do some of the sort of mono green things where you make infinite mana and then use Eternal Witness, either flickering it in and out or bouncing it up to your hand with Temur and recasting it to recycle a Lightning Bolt. That's another thing you can do, is if you have your Eternal Witness in play, or if you've got a way to find it that you can flicker, find your Ewit. Let's say you've got Recruiter of the Guard, you went infinite mana with your Emil and your, doesn't really matter, your Emil, Bellringer, and Mana Dorks. You've gone infinite and you've flickered the Recruiter of the Guard over and over, or just enough times to find Eternal Witness for that matter. Then you cast your Eternal Witness, and then you can start flickering it over and over and recast the same Lightning Bolt 40 times and deal 120 damage that way. So there's lots of ways that you can win the game with the deck. Hyrax Tower Scout also, you can use this as a combo with Kiki Jiki. So if you've got, say, Shared Summons, you can in-step cast Shared Summons, and then you will find 2 creatures. Shared Summons is a tutor for 2 creatures. It's an instant speed, 5 mana. Get any 2 creature cards, put them in your hand. So you do this at in-step before you're untapped, then you go to your turn. And the 2 creatures that you find can be If you've got your Baylen the Haymaker in play, then maybe you get Basking and Rosie. If you don't, or if there's a Draenith Magistrate in play, something like that, or if your Baylen's been killed 16 times, then instead of doing the Basking Rootwalla and the Rosie, then maybe you grab Kiki Jiki and Hyrax Tower Scout. So then you'll cast your Kiki for 5, and then you cast your Hyrax for 3. The Kiki Jiki will tap to make a copy of Hyrax Tower Scout. When the Tower Scout ETBs, it's going to untap a creature. In this case, that's going to be Kiki Jiki. Then you're going to tap the Kiki Jiki to make another copy of Hyrax Tower Scout, untapping the Kiki Jiki. Rinse and repeat until you have an infinite armada of 3/3s this time. So they're going to be even more dead with your infinite army this time. And we've also got just a lot of ways to make treasures and tokens generally. A Tireless Provisioner, Professional Facebreaker. This thing I think is probably worth running. It's a little bit expensive for what it does. I mean, I don't know. This is probably a flex slot. You could take this out for something more powerful. I do like Rosie in the deck. Now we get to use junk tokens. And whenever you sacrifice a junk token, not only do you do the normal impulse draw thing, but it also adds a red to your mana pool. So that's the thing you can do. So we can kind of grind value just putting a bunch of tokens in play. If we have infinite, let's see, if we've got infinite mana, we can use Gilded Drake to make infinite food tokens, which if we have Academy Manufacture out, it also makes a treasure and a clue, which allows you to draw your deck by cracking infinite clue tokens. Lots going on here. Also, our Baylen the Haymaker is a 4-mana creature, which turns on Elysian Curated and makes it tap for 2 mana instead of 1. And because it's a 4-power creature, it turns on Bolt Bin, so it allows us to play one of the best budget, I think, maybe the best budget interactive pieces in Naya. Well, we're playing all of them anyway. Autumn's Veil, Bolt Bend gets turned on. Swords to Plowshare, Path to Exile, Nature's Claim, Lightning Bolt, which we've seen how Lightning Bolt can kind of serve as a win condition, either Teamer Sabertoothing, your Eternal Witness in and out, and recasting the Lightning Bolt, or using a meal to flicker the Eternal Witness over and over to get your Lightning Bolt and burn everybody out that way. You can also just use like a instead of Lightning Bolt, if you have the rest of the combo set up, you just haven't found your Lightning Bolt, you can use Shared Summon. So you go infinite mana, you start flickering or returning your Eternal Witness to hand and recasting it, and you get Shared Summons in your hand. You've got infinite mana, you cast it, you get 2 creatures, you put them into play, you just fill the board with creatures. Probably you just use a creature combo to win the game at that point. Somebody tries to interrupt what you're doing, you've got Surge of Salvation. You and permanents you control gain hexproof until end of turn, and you prevent all damage from black and red sources. Most of the time this is going to be like board wipe protection or even single like target removal protection. So it's kind of like a white counterspell in our deck, because the things we're most worried about are going to be people blowing up our combo pieces while we're trying to combo off. We've got Wear and Tear, just another really good piece of interaction. The tear part is 1 white, destroy target enchantment, or you can pay for 2 red to destroy target artifact, and you can fuse these. You can pay 3 mana to blow up an artifact and an enchantment. So when you're playing in Boros and you're playing on a budget and you're trying to be competitive, this is, I think, an auto include in any Boros or Boros Plus deck. We've got even more damning Stax pieces in Thorn of Amethyst, non-creature spells, which most of our stuff are creature spells. Non-creature spells cost 1 more to cast. This actually interferes with, this is much less interfering to our combos than you might think. Like, really think about it. Most of the infinite loops that we're getting into just have us either using an ability or recasting the same thing over and over, but the thing that we're recasting is a creature spell, which also means we can play Deafening Silence. And like good decks that aren't like just weird creature decks like ours just get totally shut down. I was gonna say shit on, but that would be awful. Deafening Silence will shut down. It's a rule of law except for us. like everybody else is under rule of law, we can play around it pretty easily. It says each player cannot cast more than one non-creature spell each turn. It's like the best rule of law we can play, and it's only 1 white mana. It's like better rule of law. In this deck, it's better rule of law for 1 white instead of 3 mana. So any of your storm decks, or even somebody that just needs to cast 2, like, I mean, most of the time combo means at least 2 cards, kind of by definition, right? So when your opponents are trying to combo off, if they've got 2 things they need to cast, they can't, right? They can, well, if one of them's a creature, they can, but you get the idea. Or if they're trying to storm off, or they want to cast an ad nauseum or appear into the abyss and then play like 9 things to win the game, can't do it. So a lot of those decks just fold to Deafening Silence and really can't play the game effectively until they can deal with Deafening Silence. And we've got Bolt Bend to undeal with Deafening Silence. We've got Surge of Salvation to stop it. So on. We've got a little bit of artifact mana, but we're not using a ton of artifact mana ramp because we are leaning pretty hard into these. Well, we've got Stony Silence, which means abilities of artifacts can't be activated. That includes mana abilities, so we're only using 3 artifacts. I think we just kind of have to play in a 3-color budget deck. We just need to play Arcane Signet and Felwar Stone. Obviously, we're going to play Soul Ring, but that's it. After that, all of our mana is coming from lands and dorks. We've got Thorn of Amethyst, but that doesn't get turned off by Stony Silence or other Null Rod effects. And we are playing the Stony Silence and the Collector Ouphe, and very often you're going to be using tutors to go for Collector Ouphe in a lot of pods. Dauntless Dismantler also shits on artifacts, but not ours, and so does Manglehorn. So Daunting Dismantler has all of your opponent's stuff coming into play tapped, and you can pay X and 1 to sacrifice this thing to blow up all artifacts with mana value X. Manglehorn, ETBs, blows up their most important artifact, and then stops them from doing artifact combos. But even and so now you might be asking, well, now wait a second, how are we going to use our combos when some of them are artifacts that we're tapping for mana or we're tapping to draw cards or whatever, but we're actually not. So like Baylen the Haymaker has the ability tap 2 untapped tokens you control for 1 mana, or tap 3 untapped tokens you control to draw a card. And you can also, if you're in one of these loops, you can just pump Baylen up infinitely, give her trample, and just like delete a player from the game and then start going off. Like maybe you take out the person most likely to have interaction for you and then you continue to go off. But this doesn't require us to use the artifacts. So we don't have to like tap the treasure token with the treasure token, right? So let's say we've got Collector Ouphe out, and we've got 1 billion treasure tokens, and we're going to try to go off with Baylen. The Collector Ouphe says activated abilities of artifacts can't be activated. It doesn't say activated abilities of creatures that use artifacts to activate the abilities. I mean, that'd be a weird thing for it to say, right? So, no, like Cursed Totem would shut this off, but our stuff doesn't shut this off. That's actually one of the big draws to the deck. That's one of the things people are super interested in or about with Baylen and CDH, is because Naya colors lend themselves to 2 things very well in full-powered CEDH: Dockside combos and Collector Ouphe effects, right? So obviously there's a tension there. But with Baylen, you don't need to crack the treasures that Dockside produces, which you can't do if you've got a Collector Ouphe in play, or a Stony Silence, or a Null Rod. Baylen allows you to get around that Collector Ouphe by using the creature ability to tap the artifacts. You're not using the artifacts to tap themselves. So absolutely the Baylen the Haymaker stuff, the draw your deck, infinite mana, all that stuff works, even if it's working with artifact tokens like Scions and Clues or whatever. With a Collector Ouphe in play, we get around it, we avoid it. We are at 30 minutes on the nose. I'm getting a nose for that. So other than that, we're just playing interaction. We're playing the best tutors that we can really afford, the best tutors for the deck that we can reasonably afford. Recruiter of the Guard. God love that reprint. I was so close to breaking down and buying one for $28. Nope, don't need to do that. I was gonna go over the main combos again, but really, like, you might as well just watch the video again. I think I started off pretty quickly addressing the main, most complicated, intricate combos in the deck. The rest of this is value. Value, interaction, mana production, and Stax pieces. Stoney Silence, a Deafening Silence, Blind Obedience is a good one. And our mana base, we're at $11.45, which I think that's just what we have to do to get a functional 3-color mana base. And luckily, a lot of the stuff in the deck was not all that expensive. We've been blessed with some good reprints of important cards recently. So much so that we were allowed to play our $5 Kiki Jiki and our $4.50 Facebreaker. We were allowed to get some pieces in here that cost a little bit much, that aren't totally, absolutely 100% necessary, and still play like the good interaction and stuff. If we, that's the idea, guys. So that is Baylen Hay, the budget way. Baylen Hay, the budget way. Somebody tell me if that is a better name for the deck than Budget Baylen. Baylen Hay, the budget way. Or $100. Let me know. So until next time we meet, friends, may the force be with you and the ones you love. May peace be with you. And namaste, word to your mothers, word to your fathers. Till next time, peace to your mothers. And obviously, east side until I die on the west side.